This one has a special place in my heart because it's the first George album that I went and bought when it was brand new. I remember going to Sound Warehouse on Berry Street and picking this up in 1979, and I was in ninth grade. This came out February 20th of that year, was George's final album of the 70s. Got to number 14 in America, number 39 in the UK. For the most part, it got fair to good positive reviews. Was a couple of the songs got some radio play, and anyway, an album that I think the first solo Beatles album that I bought brand new was London Town, so the year before, but this would have been probably the second one that I went out and purchased that way when it just came out. As a kid, so a lot of these I got after the fact for Christmas or birthdays, or in some cases years later after they had come out. But anyway, this one I vividly remember knowing it was coming out and going down to the record store on the day or the weekend or whatever after it came out and buying a copy of it. So yep, 1979. Let's just good cover, another good George cover. If I was to rank the George covers, this would probably be in the top 5 or so. Back covers, George walking around there. In inner sleeve, got lyrics. Got George and some race car driver guy because he was big into race cars back in the 70s. And in fact, there's a song about that on this album. There's a label on Dark Horse. And so there's that. Yeah, this album, after the last 3 albums, had found George in some turmoil for various and sundry reasons. You can look at my earlier reviews. This album found him pretty content. He had married Olivia. They were about to, or had already had, Danny, who would have been just a little baby at the time. He recorded a lot of the album at his house, the big mansion that he had out there in England, and in love, recently married, recently a father or about to be a father for the first time. So things were going pretty well. The album is totally out of step for the most part with what was going on in 1979 with the whole punk and new wave and power pop and disco, and George didn't have any interest in any of that stuff, though there was a lot of sort of MOR music playing on the radio and on the Billboard charts too, so he wasn't totally out of step with things. This is a very relaxed, contented, laid back, almost easy listening at times, somewhat of a folk album in places, just a mellow, chill out, positive vibe album, which is not, at 1979 I had just discovered The Who. I was about to discover the Kinks. I was getting into the Clash and all that good stuff, and my music of choice was the 60s Rolling Stones and Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and the Clash and the Pretenders just around the corner, and Elvis Costello and all that good stuff. So this was not really the kind of music that I liked. But that being said, I pretty much liked this album from the get-go when I got it, and I've liked it through the years, even though it's pretty laid back. And same thing, I remember wishing back then, like I've said on these videos, I wish George would have put more rock and roll in his solo career than he did, and I wish he would have done that here. There's not much of it here, but there is some really nice stuff, some really nice music, really nice songs, and so let's just get into it, I guess. Can't think of anything else to add before we get into the song. So we will start with side 1. First song is Love Comes to Everyone, which is a very adult contemporary sounding song, kind of the sound that Steve Winwood would capitalize on just 2 or 3 years later with songs like Ark of a Diver and so forth. It's a nice enough song. I'm going to give it a 7. Like the bass by Willie Meeks on the song. It's chugs along. A little too sedate for my general taste, but it's a pretty and it's a nice song. I like it enough. Second song is Not Guilty, which is, of course, originally was intended to be on the White Album. The Beatles recorded it but didn't release it until the anthology years, and I guess it'll be on the new White Album reissue coming up. But this is George's 70s version. He revisited it. A little bit of a cocktail lounge keyboards in there. That aside, it's a laid back and pleasant song. I enjoy it for what it is. I give it a 7.5, the George version. We get to the third song on side one, which is Here Comes the Moon, which is a very lush and pretty song. A lot of people think this is a sequel to Here Comes the Sun. I'm not sure that it is. I think Here Comes the Sun was dark times with the Beatles breaking up and all that was going around then, and the sun coming out was sort of symbolic of get through the bad times and good times will come around again, or hope for better things in the future type thing. Here Comes the Moon, I think, is really just a sort of a love of nature or awe of nature, just about the thing itself, that George wrote this. I think he was in Hawaii when a full moon came up, and he was just moved by the vision of that to write the song. Anyway, it's a like I said, very pretty, moving little song. It chugs along nice. I really like it. I'm going to give it a 9.5. Fourth song on side one is Soft-Hearted Hannah, which is sort of a takeoff of an old 20s song called Hard-Hearted Hannah. So, but it's got a throwback to the 20s, kind of a, I don't know, German music hall, English music hall, ragtime type feel to it. Sort of reminds me, it's comical, it's fun, sort of reminds me of Miss Odell, one of the flip sides of the earlier singles. Kind of would have fit into the Beatles' Baroque period of the Sgt. Pepper Magical Mystery Tour times. It wouldn't have been out of place on either of those albums. Love the way the tempo speeds up at the end of the song, which he had employed that same technique on, I think it was Skiing. I could be wrong, I can't remember which song, but on Wonderwall Music, where it gets faster and faster at the end of the song, the one with the barrel house piano in it. And he does that here, sort of. Anyway, Soft-Hearted Hannah, really good one. That gets a 10 in my book. Side one concludes with Blow Away, which was a single from the album. Got to number 16 in the U.S., only got to number 15 in the U.K. And another one of my favorite George solo songs. I just love the song. It's bouncy, it's fun, it's a smile-inducing number that's, you know, it's almost impossible not to sing along with when it's on, or at least impossible not to sort of bob your head a little bit along with it. It gets a 10. I love the video for it with the big giant rubber ducky, and I love one of my favorite George moments is when he camera close up on his face and he does the little smile and just sort of goofing around there. Great song, one of my favorite George songs, like I said, and that gets a 10. So we go to side two, and the first song is Faster, which is reflects George's love of race cars and race car driving and Formula One and all that good stuff he was into. It's a catchy song with nice vocals, nice little guitar bits. It's okay. It's good enough that I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's a pretty good song. Dark Sweet Lady is the second song, side two. That's a love song to Yoko, or probably maybe to Olivia. I think I wrote that down wrong. Anyway, Dark Sweet Lady, little love song to Olivia. It's pretty. It's too middle of the road for my taste. It's sounds like George trying to imitate Little River Band or Pablo Cruz or Christopher Cross, that sort of schlocky stuff. The sentiment's nice, and I'm sure that Olivia appreciated it, or maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, Dark Sweet Lady gets a 4. It's just a little too namby-pamby for me. And the third song on side 2, Your Love Is Forever, is about the same, not much better. I'm going to give that a 4 as well. Song 4 on side 2 is Soft Touch, another song that George wrote in Hawaii when he was running around hanging out there. It's got sort of a tropical island feel to it. It's a light little song and just an upbeat, pleasant song. I do enjoy that. This is sort of that middle of the road music done right, where the previous 2 songs are middle of the road music done cliche and wrong, in my opinion. Soft Touch I like. I'm going to give it an 8. And the last song on the album is called If You Believe, which is just George wrote all the songs on this album except for that one. He co-wrote with Gary Wright, the If You Believe. Not much to it. It's okay. It chugs along, and it's, when you're listening to it, it does the job, but it's not very memorable and it's not very substantial. So I will give that a 6. So yeah, like I said, I like this album back in 1979, and I've always held it in pretty high regard. It's sort of just a soft, sort of muted, laid back George Harrison album. I wish he would have. I'm not saying he should have jumped on the disco train, because I didn't really like disco anyway, or the punk didn't come out with the mohawk or something. But I wish he would have thrown a couple of rock and roll, crunchy guitar bit songs in there, or just something like that. But I always liked this album, and I'm going to give it an 8.5. And George ends the 70s on a high note, I guess. We'll see you later with the next George album, and have fun until then.